In 1882, Friedrich Nietzsche took a much-needed retreat from Germany after a critical heartbreak, the outcome of a Miss Lou Salome abandoning him after, once again, rejecting his marriage proposal. And so at that low point in his life, Nietzsche ventured to Rapallo, Italy, a place that would soon become the breeding grounds for one of the most extraordinary works, not just in Nietzsche's canon, but in all of philosophy. It was the fictional treatise The Spoke Zarathustra. In it, he chronicles a wise hermit, Zarathustra, leaving his isolation in the mountains to preach wisdom to the masses. And when he finally arrives at the village, it's through the mouth of Zarathustra that Nietzsche lays out his three metamorphoses that a person must undergo to find true freedom and an abundance of creative energy. These three metamorphoses, or shall we say evolutions, are 1, the camel, 2, the lion, and then finally 3, the child. So, stage number 1, the camel. In The Spoke Zarathustra, Zarathustra has a deep hatred for herd animals, and this is because herd animals have an instinct for safety that results in all them wanting to do is graze pasture all day long. Additionally, they don't do well with labor or extreme temperatures, and they have zero curiosity for adventure or risk-taking. And to top it off, they're completely dependent creatures, solely relying on the shepherd as a guide to find what's good for them. But the whole reason this comes up in the story is because when Zarathustra finally arrives in town and preaches his sagely wisdom, the call to action is received with indifference and even mockery, and this is when he basically calls the townspeople cows. He draws a similarity between the townspeople and livestock by pointing to their complacency, their contentment for a quiet, no surprises, moderately wealthy life. Nietzsche adds another nail to this characterization of the townspeople by calling the town itself motley cow, which was alluding to the philosopher Plato and how he would use the word motley in expressing his disgust for majority rule in democracy. And so, given the context that Nietzsche brings up the word here in the story, motley cow effectively translates as rule of the herd. However, unlike the majority of the herd, there are those few who have an ambition for self-discovery, and as such, their strong spirit enables them to venture out and explore the spiritual landscape, which might very well be a one-way ticket they may never return from, but to them, the journey is worth the risk. Now, in the beginning of this journey, stage 1, that is when we, according to Nietzsche, embark as camels. And let's just go ahead and address the obvious question here. Why in the hell, of all the animals to pick, would Nietzsche select a camel? Well, the camel, unlike the herd animal, is inclined to labor. It takes on heavy loads and carries them for long distances. And so in the story, the camel represents the strong spirit who is happy to carry heavy burdens. Nietzsche expounds, there are many things for the spirit, for the strong heavy spirit in which dwell respect and awe. Its strength longs for the heavy, for the heaviest. Thus it kneels down like the camel and wants to be well laden. What Nietzsche was getting at here is that there are those few people who possess a particular strong spirit, the spirit like that of a camel, where they desire to be heavily laden because their strength is their glory. And so, like in any good coming-of-age narrative, the protagonist, with his or her camel-like spirit, expends his or her energy in training, learning, and exploring. Consequently, he or she amasses a burden of knowledge that's been forged by the great minds of the past. But over time, the weight adds up, and while we rejoice in bearing the knowledge of our predecessors, the desert is dreadfully lonely, and the weight keeps piling on still. It then comes to a point when the camel spirit no longer wants to shoulder beliefs and values that aren't its own, and it soon becomes too much, where the breaking point is when the camel finds out that the world doesn't deal in ultimate values or morals, nor in ultimate meanings of life. This is why Nietzsche stated elsewhere, "You have your way, I have my way, but as for the right way, the correct way, the only way, it does not exist." And so it is here that the camel unloads itself to take charge in obtaining its own ideas and values, to create its own destiny and I will. This I will assertion strikes at Nietzsche's concept of the will to power, meaning he thought that all humans have a will to power, a desire to control both themselves and whatever environment they inhabit. But even then, not many people have the courage to act out their will to power, to face the dragon that denies them their self-mastery. And so now, as you loosen the burdens to create your own destiny and I will, there is a simultaneous demand that you must undergo a new evolution, a transformation into the second stage of metamorphosis, the lion. After the spiritual wanderer takes on its new form, they're still stranded in the desert, but now equipped with new abilities and motivations that shape their path forward, which is to become king of the desert. And in order to do so, the strong spirit needs to chase freedom and capture it. And as Nietzsche tells us, it does so by contending with the existing king of the desert, a dragon called Thou Shalt. This cunning creature presents itself as a sparkling authority figure, with each of its 1,000 scales carrying a glittering thou shalt commandment. In seeing the dragon, the nature of the fight to come is first one of resisting temptation, as the dragon carries an appeal that represents the comfort of tradition, an invitation to the lull of the familiar and the broadly accepted. Thou shalt is the enemy of self-mastery. And so if the lion fails to slay the dragon, it would mean being tamed by it, submitting to the path more traveled, the philosophy of the herd from which it initially departed from. On the other hand though, if the lion is to succeed, it needs to stand its ground and firmly declare, I will. In thus Spoke Zarathustra, this comes after each time the dragon retorts that all values have already been created, that they are each written on his glittering scales and the lion has only to read and accept them. The dragon says, there shall be no more, I will. But if the lion holds his ground, the fight must escalate. Words will breach an impasse that only physicality can resolve. And so, as the lion proceeds, Nietzsche writes how it roars the sacred no, a statement that represents the denunciation of all the morals and values that came before it, the knowledge that it had so diligently shouldered as a camel. Now, in slaying the dragon, the lion has earned its true freedom and moreover is ready to undergo its final evolvement. And now, you as the strong spirit who wills your own will in rejecting the old dogmas, traditions, and values that saturated the world, you now have the ability, as Nietzsche would say, to conquer. The power to access true freedom and an abundance of creativity. And so what form does Nietzsche depict as a worthy representation of such conquering? A child. At first glance, this seems like a joke. I mean, we had just issued our own I will statement and defeated a dragon. Shouldn't the third evolvement be something a little bit more epic? And so what gives? Well, Nietzsche explained it this way. The child is innocence and forgetfulness, a new beginning, a game, a self-propelling wheel, a first motion, a sacred yes. And so he imagines that after one becomes unburdened by the laws and conventions of society, that person is an individual liberated to create and play. Furthermore, Nietzsche tells us that the sacred yes is for the game of creation. It is for discovering what you truly want, to win and conquer your own world, to create your own unique style and sophistication, to be authentic and honest, open, caring, and free. In a word, the sacred yes is for reaching your full potential. Now, when it came to Nietzsche's personal life, he himself was among his target audience for whom he wrote, as it was his ambition to cultivate the force of life affirmation and attain the final stage of metamorphosis, to become what he would also call the ubermensch, or the overman. However, whether he obtained it or not is difficult to say. He suffered through a serious case of mental illness that only got worse over time, and especially so after witnessing a horse being flogged on the side of the road. But what we can be more sure of is that the influence of his mind had left a lasting impression across multiple fields of revolutionary thought, such as the onset of psychology, postmodernism, existentialism, structuralism, and even applied philosophy. So I think we can say that to the extent intellectual effort was aligned with his vision of excellence, he got pretty damn close to the mark. Well, that is all for this video, guys. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed it, please give it a thumbs up below. And to close, I will leave you with some wise words from the man himself, Friedrich Nietzsche. You must have chaos within you to give birth to a dancing star.